This is the spring, summer and autumn's tale of my grandmother's relatively short yet fruitful hardy life. At the same time, it is the story of rural Hong Kong. And interviews of family members, I'm able to explore the larger truths about not only her, but of politics, culture, history and the groups of people. I wanted to understand in this documentary and see the world from my grandmother's eyes.
五個係你嫲嫲就最大嘅，我係第二。我哋以前咁好凄涼㗎，細個你大半埋，咁佢有個錢。
Grandmother was born in the mid-1920s to a typical impoverished Hakka family in New Territory's Tai Po. This is where she grows up with her family and spent pretty much the best part of her early years, spring part of her life, up in the hills helping with her family. If I had any regrets, I wish I could have interviewed her. And I have no live video recordings of her as well. And I wish I did this project earlier so I could interview many more of her generations who have now passed away. The more I digged, the more I understood. The more I truly admire and love both my grandmother and understand and contextualize Hong Kong history. Both are intertwined and very much reasons why we enjoy the fruits of their hard past.
點樣孭去大埔啲柴？
擔咯，
擔住喎，個大埔墟喎。
係啊，
行去
2個鐘頭。
有
呢度冇乜嘢都冇得食嘛。分分鐘都係肚餓噶嘛。
啲雞啊、豬咧都係拎去大埔
雞、
豬蛋啊嗰啲。
養到有賣得錢到嘅咧，都攞去大埔賣。嗰條路唔係好行喎，即係爛路田船坡有水。
What is the meaning of Hakka? Stranger, newcomers, settlers, guests? Pretty much compared to Bundy, who were the local indigenous native inhabitants. Hakka were described as stranger families, sojourners, immigrants, newcomers. Violence often broke out between Hakka and non-Hakka as they had different language, clothing, food and culture. Quite often they were accused of being non-Chinese barbarians of lowly tribal origin. Hakka and Tai Po, when did they arrive? This is Tai Po market. They arrived in the early Qing dynasty. Quite often the Hakka arrived quite late in many areas in China, so they were stuck with the narrow alleys and the lowland and bay areas. Pretty much had to settle for more hilly, less productive and desirable and harder to farm lands. In contrast to the stereotype of Chinese woman as delicate and frail, the reputation of Hakka Woman was of exceptional strength, both mental and physical, known to be very sure-footed, hard-working and proud.
亦都有人見到有老虎，嗰啲老虎咧係由鹽田啊、深圳嗰邊過嚟嘅，
華南老虎啊嘛。
係嗰個過嚟。
咁所以你上去斬柴，你唔可以一個人上㗎喎。
冇話唔理嘅咯，
即係唔理嘅，即係見到都冇辦法㗎。
就你俾老虎食咗咯，唔理㗎啦。嗰啲以前咧非人生活啊，點解咁早走咗？啊，好過福嘅，真係凄涼啊！點解日本仔企住喺度？嗰支槍咧當隻有劍喺度啊！有劍喺度，隨時可以。日本仔冇人情喎，冇人當你人係畜生嚟啫喎，當你人你中國人係動物嚟啫喎。到11、12、12、13歲嘅時候啊，夜晚走去晒嗰隻病啊，病嘅晒就唔翻得嚟，逢仲吹嗰啲10幾歲嗰啲啊。
就係捉嗰啲。走
嗰啲森林，嗰樹林嗰度病啊。
匿埋。
呢咪啊，唔翻得嚟㗎！
即係佢會吹有聲吹要揾。
冇心啫，攞啲麵包，攞啲炒米啊，做糧啊，做乾糧嚟啊！佢講
或者係打你劍，有啲係佢見到都驚嘅。
佢大白咁多人俾幾支劍咁就捉低啊，捉死佢。佢話你游擊隊啊，你嗰日本仔以前咧最怕游擊隊。
係好喺惠州嗰邊。
Where she met my grandfather. The journey in those days was risky. From animals and bandits alike. Here I am retracing her steps. Though it had been the norm for many generations, I do wonder and feel what my grandmother was thinking as she left the safety net of her family, the love of her siblings, the care and affection of her parents and cousins alike, to a new town, to live with a man she'd never met before. What were her family thinking at the same time as well? But I guess they didn't have time to think. It was just all part of the journey. And cultural traditions. But even by the early 1980s, most of the new territories was beautiful countryside, rice fields, pigs, cattle, fish ponds, pretty much the same way of living for centuries. Simple, yet hard. Close, intimate relationships within, and very little interaction with those outside. It was the way they've survived, generations after generations. The back-breaking, yet endless, but efficient crop planting, which was very much tied to the changing seasons. She taught herself how to be a traditional wife, and a Hakka farmer, and a mother, in a village dominated by males.
種嘢啊嗰啲咧，梗係有啲拗撬係咯，即係有啲成日蝦阿嫲咯，即係蝦我咁講，成日俾人鬧咯，係咯，成日俾人咩咯即係好似話生完嘅，又即刻又要去種去落田啊，又咩我即係咁，我聽佢講過係咁樣啦，係咁樣，你做細啊嘛。
人哋識講廣東話嘛？
係啊，
但你唔識啊嘛？
唔識嘅，
嗰啲輸蝕好大。
係咯。
阿飯係叫阿公嗰度食飯啊嘛，大鑊飯。
係咯，食大鑊飯。
即係總之有2台㗎啦，計埋啲兄弟姊妹啊、孫啊嗰啲，全部一齊夜晚都一齊食㗎啦。
其實我娘嘅咪俾人蝦咯，冇脾，唔敢發脾氣。
其實咁樣係最慘。
係咯，老公又唔係
性格啊係好腍嘅，對啲女我嘅啫，講嚟講去。
有收成咧，就攞去大埔個墟，因為沙田以前完全係好荒蕪㗎，連墟都冇嘅。大埔反而好咗嘅有墟，咁去到墟咧就同人哋交換一啲日常用品啊，翻嚟啊，咁我哋要扮過幾個山，由呢度扮過去。
Boom, in which Hong Kong had recovered quite rapidly from the devastation of World War II, as well as the Korean War as well. It was the first time for Mandy to go to education, including all her children, and would later form the cornerstone and the foundation of Hong Kong's success from its transformation from an agricultural to manufacturing and eventually to service.
唱又成㗎嘛，真嘢一樣啊！真係嘛，真嘢一樣啊！佢哋咁喺正門口行過啊，唔驚一隊咁去操過細路仔。你唔記跟住日頭啊，起身啊，咁我哋咪細嘅走出去睇。咁我記得佢喺魚塘嗰度咧就有幾架嘅細路仔驚，冇啊，佢唔會中你哋㗎。阿媽啊、老豆啊、阿爺啊嗰啲係嘛，驚bully 啦。你老豆老母阿爺 bully 我哋啦，知唔知啊？直情係 bully 型啊！佢哋唔係講笑啊！佢因為佢發泄啊嘛，佢心情唔好啊，佢辛苦啊，又冇乜錢啊咁啊，跟住啊食唔飽啊，咁你係咪捉你哋啲僆仔嚟？話知你仔女佢都會咁噶嚇，咁好似會有 BB 走出嚟㗎，咁得翻得嚟。你阿太都你阿嫲都呃我哋㗎，細路仔都信㗎，喺河邊執翻嚟。啊！佢應該好驚咁嘅。驚，嗰陣咪好似話沙田。你好想冚晒啊！我哋咪水浸咯，水浸啊！夜晚啊嘛，夜晚水浸啊！你阿爺係啦，嗰啲浸到唔知幾多尺㗎，到個細路仔到呢度㗎。咁你阿爺好似抱住我嘅，又上去上面啊，上面巷嗰度啊，比較高啲啊，興白嗰度啊，嗰水上唔到去啦。啊，我哋嗰度好似撤退晒嘅，好似走晒嘅，好似我好似記得。咁啊喺佢上面嘅，咁啊又冇瞓好嘛。因為佢睡唔去啊嘛，佢晒都翻咗去啦，好記得。啲數咩啦，比較大啲啦。
有冇咩印象好驚啊？定係話我嗰時喺九龍做緊嘢咯？
我九龍做緊嘢。
都話真係好危險啊！炸彈又殺人。
係啊，我咪喺民安隊咯。佢暴動，跟住就係咯，我喺幫手啊嘛。咁跟住宵禁啊，夜晚唔準出嚟嘛，所有成個香港唔準啲人出嚟啊嘛。咁我咧就喺民安隊上邊就睇到係好犀利，好激烈啊！放炸彈自己製造。
In the 1980s and 1990s, the Chinese were the third largest non-indigenous ethnic minority in Britain. But World War I arrivals, secondly, post-World War II arrivals until mid-1960s, and reinforcement until mid-1960s.
哇！佢嘅係嘛？
佢坐飛機湊翻嚟啊嘛。
啊！呢個會係咪佢帶翻嚟㗎？
係兩個人，佢自己一個人坐啊嘛。佢未坐過飛機。
未坐過，我話佢已經叻就話。
係啊，佢又夠膽坐。係啊。
佢又夠膽去。
一個人喎，先上機㗎。
嗰時佢讀都唔敢去㗎，冇去過邊度㗎。沙田都甚少去㗎，最多就係大埔。大埔佢我而家係大埔嗰邊㗎嘛。係啊，最多係大埔。係啊。
With my parents living on the other side of the world, my grandmother took on the responsibility to nurture us, to teach us, to feed us, to bath us. Me and my sister. I was barely 1 year old when I arrived in Hong Kong. My sister was even younger, only 1 month old. She did an amazing job of raising us both. I remember the days were carefree, very happy, a little bit spoiled, and we were basically like wildlings doing what we wanted, running around, usually with no shoes. She took us to the local kindergarten in Warchair. Every day, she picked us up. Due to the manufacturing boom, native language. I realized that these are the 3 places that my grandmother took me with the most. It's ingrained in me. It's part of my DNA. It's very much like the sea turtles. When they grow up, they like to go back to the beach where they were born.
The whole concept of the new generation cities first started in the 1970s, of which Sha Tin was one of the earliest. For example,
it's reflected in the fact you can be born here, have your education, work, retire, and be buried and died in the same place, Sha Tin. People's livelihood within Hong Kong greatly improved due to the success of these new towns dotted all around Hong Kong. What has intrigued me is the latest Northern Metropolis plan. Will they be just as successful? We shall see.
I remember walking to school
okay.
with you.
Oh, you remember that?
Yeah, just...
I don't remember much about walking.
I remember walking to school and not really knowing where I was walking, but I remember my grandmother just lying there with a ventilator. I remember my aunts telling me to remove my glasses so that my grandmother could see me because she probably wouldn't.
大排檔做嘢就好快就之後就有病，咁所以之後跟住嘅印象就喺佢嘅醫院咯，同埋要洗腎咯。咁大致上就係呢啲回憶啦。
咁你對佢個人嗰個性格啊，有咩記憶嘅？
勤力嘅覺得係，咁同埋都多嘢講嘅，咁主要都係講客家啦，咁所以啲客家都喺佢嗰度學翻嚟，點啊嗰啲咯，傾偈嘅。
即係你感覺到係佢都好錫你哋噶嘛，好愛好錫咁，好關心。
係啊，如果上一代嚟講，都屬於關心嘅，起碼會問問題啊，係咯。會傾，會掛住佢啊，話記得會啊，因為尤其是而家去咗，我自己去咗外國咧，之前見到阿大姨咧，我覺得有啲似㗎，即係大姨同媽咪係有啲婆婆嘅嗰啲樣咧，尤其是佢哋講客家嘅時候，因為都好似去咗郊遊咁啊嘛，開心嘅，同埋每次臨走佢哋都會俾10蚊我20蚊咁樣。哇！好開心啊！好開心。咁呢個。
係啦，咁當然就唔係為咗阿婆婆而好開心，應該係去到嗰度有得出邊好似有得踩單車啊之類，有個田啊咁樣嘅出邊，係啊，同埋嗰度有好多其他小朋友玩，咁好熱鬧嘅，係啦，跟住肯定係錫嘅，咁就未必會，即係又未必去到啊好中你哋乜都容許嗰啲嘅，咁啊錫就會有咯。因為嗰陣時都會有啲時候，因為佢哋都好傳統啊嘛，係啦。譬如有時我哋講啲説話講錯咗，咁佢哋又會鬧㗎啦咁樣嘅。但係就係嗰下，佢會同我哋沖涼咯，係好得意嘅，即係都係幾歲啦。咁因為嗰陣時我記得佢都好似佢都唔着衫定點樣㗎？應該係嘅，嗰個年代係咁樣，好似佢都唔着衫。變咗佢都唔會整濕，係啦。咁而家睇翻已經其實都幾得意喎呢樣嘢。有時我而家唔會咁樣嘅，係佢好似唔識傳送，我最少送係嗰啲就第三唔知係三嘅，佢哋幾個個樣都好似，我覺得印象中就係好似。咁跟住去到大美督嗰度又好得意啦，出邊有個田細塊，咁好似你父母買好多玩具俾你。咁我又唔知好想拆嚟一齊玩咁，但係好似話佢哋唔得，因為你要喺飛機度玩啊，唔可以喺度拆咗先啊，係類似呢啲我記得好似寫過。
Around this area, in particular here, behind the slope here. Remember, I used to ride my bicycle, more like a tricycle, up and down here a lot. It used to be a little bit stressed up, and then coming back to school, There was a TV around here. I mean, we didn't have a TV at home. There was a TV around here, and I would stand out here and watch the TV show.
Finally, me and my sister were around 4 or 5 years old, of a good age. My parents decided it was time to go back to the UK with them. I wonder how my grandmother felt about this. Her job was completed, but she must have been very sad.
Noisy, because you have the planes outside. You can see now coming out. Just outside the back, you have 747s just flying high past, probably every few minutes. Karen City gives me a lot of memories because this was the place where I last saw my grandmother in 19. Going to the shops around here and buying the suitcases and the rucksack, and she gave me the final present. I knew we were going far away. I wasn't quite sure how many years, how long. I don't remember her sentiment, but I guess she must have been very sad because the grandchild, both myself and my sister that she looked after for many years, were now leaving to a distant place and probably not to come back for many, many years.
The Queen did not come out to greet us. We grew up in a Chinese takeaway. Life was very hard. Hours were very long, but we enjoyed school. Growing up in the UK was both challenging and rewarding at the same time.
嗰陣時嘅女人啊，多數都係冇乜意見嘅，係咪冇乜意見嘅？咁通常都係男人話晒事啦。係啊，媽咪過咗嚟，就就梗係點解個朋友冇翻嚟啊咁樣？
哦，即係呢個係之後我已經過咗係㗎啦。
過咗去係啊，冇見好耐咁啊。喂，點解
少咗個朋友嘅？
係啊。
哦。See yourself as a bit of Hakka, as Cantonese, as Chinese, as Hong Kong, as London, as BBC, as British, as Commonwealth. How do you see yourself?
It has to be a mix of everything.
Of all of that.
Frank. Yeah, it has to be all of that.
Mix,
I don't think I'd be the person I was without my Hakka roots, without like my Cantonese roots, and clearly I was born in the UK, so everything I am is also partly influenced by that. So it's actually probably harder for somebody to know their identity when they're so mixed.
Summer of 1993, we received a phone call from Hong Kong informing us that grandmother was very sick and it's best we flew back. And we did, the family, the four of us. We managed to see her in the hospital before she passed away peacefully, and a funeral took place in this little park just outside Falltown village. Funerals in the 1990s were long drawn affairs, emotional, full of crying, wailing, painful, hot, exacerbated by the fact that she was gone too soon. It happened right in the summer of the biggest social unrest in Hong Kong for decades, and the feelings and tensions.
And she may not be there when you need her, so don't put the weight of your world on a woman. Just love her the best that you can. Show her your power, that you'd be just fine without her, and you'll be her favorite man. She doesn't want someone who she can control, and she doesn't want someone to stare in her soul. But if you can be still in the eye of her storm, then she'll be your number one fan.
Responsibility and time to look after her grandchildren, she was willing to fly, travel halfway around the world when she almost had never even travelled outside of her own village town, and holding on her deathbed to see her children, and in particular her grandchildren, before she passed away. She could no longer speak when I last saw her in the Prince of Wales hospital bed in Sha Tin, but then I was old enough to see her eyes looking deep into mine and saying all that needs to be said. She is part of me and will always be.
Despite the commitment you think you've secured, and despite the attention you feed her, nothing she promises is guaranteed, and she may not be there when you need her. So don't put the weight of your world on a woman. Just love her the best that you can. Show her your power, that you'd be just fine without her, and you'll be her favorite man. She doesn't want someone who she can control, and she doesn't want someone to stare in her soul. But if you can be still in the eye of her storm, then she'll be your number one fan. On a woman, just love her the best that you can. Show her your power, that you'll be just fine without her, and you'll be her favorite man. She doesn't want someone who she can control, and she doesn't want someone to stare in her soul. But if you can be still in the eye of her storm, then she'll be your number one fan. If you can be still in the eye of her storm, then she'll be your number one fan.